The government's failed bet on energy is making headlines yet again. You'll remember Uncle Sam doling out roughly $530 million so Fisker Automotive could make cars in, not Detroit, Finland. Turns out those luxury hybrids are catching on fire, and the company is I'm telling the truth here. It's funny, but it's true. They're recalling every last one of these cars. Time to bring in our panel. Clint Greenleaf is the CEO of Greenleaf Book Group in Austin. Gretchen Hamill is the executive director of Public Notice, and Monica Crowley is a radio talk show host. Gretchen, let's start with you. Fisker, really? They're made in Finland. They catch on fire. Why are they getting public dollars? I don't understand.
Exactly. Again, this is trying to force something upon the public that the public just doesn't want right now. The public isn't really ready for electric cars, but in order to entice them, there's a $7,500 subsidy to get people to buy these cars, and the cars cost over $100,000 to begin with. But I don't know about you, I don't think I want to be paying $100,000 to be, riding around in an electric car.
That apparently catches on fire, which is generally not good.
Do we really want to subsidize people with a lot of money paying $100,000 for a car? Monica.
Well, that's exactly right. Look, this is another perfect example of what happens when the government gets involved in the private sector. They warp the marketplace. They try to pick winners and losers. And in some cases, like Solyndra and with this Fisker car, they actually take losers and try to turn them into winners. The problem is that when so much taxpayer dough is going into this kind of social engineering in the private sector, what's supposed to be the private sector, you get all kinds of warping of the market.
That's right.
And frankly, the taxpayer on the hook for billions of dollars in this case.
Well, Clint, it's economic engineering, isn't it? And it ain't working. We need some new engineers if that's what they're trying to do.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We're talking about 293 cars. They recalled all of them. 293. Come on. It's actually a car that's selling worse than the Volt, for God's sake.
Not even one. Not even one worked.
Right.
It's crazy. I couldn't agree with you more, Clint. Good point. All right. Latest figures show fellas have officially won back the workforce, with over 2/3 claiming private sector jobs. What's more, they're taking over fields usually dominated by women. Clint, what's going on, and what's up with you guys?
Well, I'll tell you this. I've hired hundreds of people at my business, and I've never made a decision based on gender. I think if you're looking for a mate, you should look for gender. And in any other hiring situation, you never pay attention to gender. So this is the kind of situation, I guess we hope it's at parity, but I never understood why someone would base a hiring decision one way or the other based on gender.
Monica?
Well, it's interesting. They were talking about this recession as a man session because the huge majority of the jobs were actually being lost by men. And actually, we came to a point in the U.S. economy where almost, but not quite, women dominated the workforce or had the majority of the jobs. I think what's going on now is a lot of these jobs, to the extent that they're happening, were the jobs that were lost by men. So, of course, employers might look back to a man to fill that position. However, as you point out, Jerry, some of these jobs are happening in retail and in other areas traditionally dominated by women. So if women want to get back in the workforce, they might face a much more difficult problem doing that.
Gretchen, what do you say?
I agree with Monica, but at the end of the day, we have all made really good points here. But the points are, or the major point is that the economy just isn't producing the jobs we needed to produce in order to make sure every man and woman who wants a job can actually have a job.
Well, I love that. That's actually a very good insight. Well, let's talk about the holidays. Turn back a page. It turns out record number of holiday shoppers were locked and loaded for the Christmas season. According to FBI background checks, gun sales rocketed in the days leading up to Christmas. Is this surprising, Monica?
I don't think so. I think there's been a lot of unease in the country for quite a long time. Certainly economic unease, political unease going into a presidential election year. There's not a lot of confidence in the economy. There's also not a lot of confidence in our political leaders, regardless of the party.
But does that drive you to buy a gun?
Well, I think there's a lot of fear that, if this thing goes down, it would go down really fast. And I'm talking about the economy. One pull of the string and the whole sweater unravels.
Wow.
And I think a lot of people want to be prepared for the unexpected, and what better way than to arm themselves?
Clint, are you that negative about the future? I guess, my glass is always half full, as you know. What do you say, Clint?
No, I'm a big optimist, but I live in Texas. I think most everybody that I know is armed at one way or another. And frankly, I think it's probably a good thing. I think it's a much safer way to live. If I know that everyone's armed, I'm probably going to behave better, and I think crime goes down because of it. So I think it's a much better way to be.
Gretchen?
Well, like Clint, I'm an Oklahoma girl, a farm and ranch girl, and oftentimes my grandmother was the recipient of a new shotgun every now and then. So, you know, this is nothing new for, you know, someone who comes from the South like Clint and I. But, you know, maybe it is a little bit alarming. Maybe it does say something about where the public stands right now and how they feel about the direction this nation is heading in.
Well, let me talk about my favorite weapon of choice, Starbucks. You might want to think twice before ordering your next coffee at Starbucks. The world's biggest coffee chain is raising its prices in the Northeast and Sunbelt regions to help offset rising costs of coffee, milk, fuel, you name it. Monica, I think people pay too much for coffee, period. That's just my view.
You know what's interesting about this story, and I agree with you about Starbucks, I agree with you about coffee, but what's interesting is the government has told us for about a year that don't worry, there's no real inflation happening in the economy.
Oh no, go back to sleep, absolutely.
They take out the two things that Americans use every day, and all Americans use every day, which is food and fuel. And I think what you're seeing in the Starbucks price rise is the effects of inflation.
Clint, right? I mean, absolutely. You know, let's get Ben Bernanke to go shopping with us, because at the end of the day, there's a ton of inflation in this economy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised it's only 1%. The inflation all around us is more like 4 or 5%, it seems like, in food. So the fact that Starbucks is only going up 1%, I think is actually a sign of the times. But there's no question that core CPI is one of the dumbest metrics we've ever put out there in the media.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Gretch, what do you say?
Well, whether you're buying Tide or your groceries, you know that costs are going up, and I think it sends a signal to the American public that there's a lot of uneasiness out there about the future of this nation, that at some point, you know, lawmakers are going to be calling for more taxes to pay off this debt, and we're seeing inflation happen right here.
All right. You guys have me a little nervous tonight, I got to tell you.
No.
Clint, Gretchen, and Monica, thank you so much. Great job. Happy New Year.
You too.
Happy New Year.
Thanks, Jerry, too.
All right, after the break, we head back to Iowa as we look at what's next for the candidates who don't finish near the top. And coming up in just a few minutes.